Hi, everybody. Welcome to Cool Planet's Masterclass. You're all very welcome. I would say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you're dialing in from the world. We're just going to give some attendees maybe another 30 seconds to join, and then we'll be kicking off. So you're most welcome. Okay, I think we're going to kick off. Um, so my name is Barbara McCarthy. I'm the CIO here, Chief Information Officer at Cool Planet. And I'm also going to be joined by Keith O'Reilly, who's our Head of Product. And we want to talk to you about all things AI and especially their relevance in terms of energy transition. And a lot of you may be coming from specifically manufacturing industries, and we'll dive into that as well in terms of the relevance of it and the opportunities for anybody in that area. So if I think about AI just as a technology, essentially, I have to say I'm very, very excited about it because if I think back to when I graduated from college, so I graduated in 1993 for my primary degree. And that was the same year that the World Wide Web was launched to the world, essentially. And I don't think I've been as excited about a technology since then because I can see the opportunities that it presents. And I don't think this statement here is over-egged, actually. So AI is the new electricity, just as electricity transformed industries, AI will now do the same. And I think it is very, very true. So if we dive in then to kind of say, okay, where is it at? What can it do for us? Essentially, if we take a little bit of a go back to school moment, to actually talk about the definition of what it is. So it is a technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human learning. So comprehension, problem solving, decision making, creativity, and autonomy. And that is enormous. I think especially around the simulating human learning, the comprehension, the problem solving, and then obviously it enables the rest. But it really is very, very powerful for what we need in industry. And I think it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it is going to transform your industry. And when we think about AI, who doesn't love a dancing robot video, right? Or who doesn't laugh at hallucinating cat pictures? But and we love to slag AI off, I think anyway. Um, but however, there's an awful lot more to AI than robotics or hallucinating cat pictures. There's a huge amount of benefits for companies to be gained in automated decision making in the analysis, the future prediction, the general efficiency, and the productivity gains. And I think, in a way, I think sometimes when I see stuff like this, it's a little bit distracting. I mean, the advancements that have been made in the last couple of years are monumental. And if we look at AI, say, from the very evolution of, say, things like machine learning, AI feels as if it's a very new technology. But if you go right back to I suppose, the birth of AI, really people consider it to be around 1950. So Alan Turing, who was a really, really reputable scientist in 1950, he came up with a thing called the Turing test. And the Turing test was essentially invented to ascertain whether machines can think. And a lot of people kind of deem that to be the first, I suppose, birth of AI. And then if you fast forward to 1961, you come to the first industrial robot. So companies like GM and a lot of the auto car manufacturers would have embraced some of these technologies at the time and advanced them further. Then you advance again, fast forward to 1972, and this is actually a picture of the first humanoid robot, believe it or not. Now, it does kind of look like a heap of Lego at this stage because we're used to, again, looking at humanoid robots and seeing the amazing things they can do. But this was actually the first humanoid robot, so it's a very long time ago. And then fast forward again, and you get to the more recent advancements of AI. So a lot of companies were using sort of machine learning, computer vision, et cetera, in the 80s, 90s, noughties, et cetera. But it really, everything kind of kicked off really from 2012 all the way up to 2020. and beyond. And if you look at 2020 over here, you see that, okay, it's nearly hard to believe now that it was November 22 when ChatGPT was launched to the world. So that really has expedited everything. And a lot of the big tech companies, I suppose, stood up and took note of what was coming. And essentially, well, a lot of them, like Google, have been, developing things, you say, for example, in DeepMind for a long, long time. But really, there's so many new players in this whole arena now that weren't there probably prior to 2020. And then you think about 23 is around where sort of we started to see a lot of the newer Gen AI tools come out. Some of those are built on existing models, but essentially the speed is increasing exponentially. And I suppose the big thing is that now you have code generation tools. So essentially you're using AI to improve AI and its capabilities. And if you look at the model or the chart here on the left-hand side, right, what these lines show you is essentially the capabilities of AI. So they're graded, an AI model is graded on different things. So it could be graded on competition level mathematics or language understanding or visual common sense reasoning, et cetera, or image classification, visual reasoning, etc. So every time a new model comes out from any of the bigger tech companies, they're graded essentially. And everybody likes to obviously think that their model is the best model. But this is just a general classification of all the models together. And the interesting thing that you can see here is if you look at this competition level mathematics here, look how quickly it has gone from here up to here. And this chart cuts off at 2023, so I couldn't even get one for 2025. But the interesting thing is that this here, this line, the dotted line, is actually human baseline intelligence. So you look and you see the speed at which all of these have increased since 2012 up until now, and pretty much because this cuts off at 23, pretty much all of them have surpassed human baseline intelligence. So that means that they can reason, they can understand, they can learn, they can make decisions, they can do pretty much most of which, if not all of which, that humans can do. So the other interesting thing is there is a lot of horses in the race. Okay, so all of the big tech companies, you have companies like Google have a model called Gemini. So you have Meta has Llama. You've got OpenAI has ChatGPT. You've got Anthropic has Claude. You've got Alibaba has Qwen. So all of these big tech companies have invested not millions, but billions into these models, into these foundation models, as we call them. But that opens up a whole host of opportunities for other companies who can essentially license those models and gain the benefits of the investment that the other companies, the large tech companies, have made. So, and again, it reminds me a little bit of the browser wars back in the 90s, where there was lots of companies in the browser wars and everybody wanted their browser to be the default browser for everybody. And essentially that kind of worked its way out over time, and Google probably became the most dominant browser. But here I think it's pretty much the same in terms of these foundational models. Some of them are better at different things and they're targeted towards different capabilities. But if you look at the more generic models, which is these ones here that you can see on the screen, you can see that they're clustering, okay, as in, and this is just in terms of how they're scoring against human preference for the answer. So it's humans saying, I prefer this answer versus this answer. So that essentially they score them like that. So that's kind of where they are in the ranking at the moment, and that's up to January 2025. The other interesting thing about this slide is that in 2024, 65% of organizations were using Gen AI. So that's nearly double 2023. And I think when you get to the end of 25, you'll see that we're close to the kind of 90 percentile, right? Kind of up at that range, that essentially most companies will be using Gen AI or just traditional ML AI, which is a huge percentage. And then you look at things like the manufacturing companies specifically, 82% of companies plan to boost their AI budgets in 2025. So that's a phenomenal statistic. The other thing I think is interesting here is that 53% of manufacturing professionals favor co-pilots rather than fully autonomous agents. And the difference, I suppose, in terms of a co-pilot versus an agent is that a co-pilot is like the thing that gives you insights, advice, you ask it questions, it gives you responses, etc., but it doesn't carry out the action of its advice. So an agent is more something that does the thing. So in an industrial setting, it might integrate with the machine. It might change the set point on the machine. It might change a temperature setting. It might do that. And we're seeing at the moment that pretty much more than half of manufacturing professionals prefer co-pilots rather than agents. And I think that's a bit of a trust thing because, again, AI models can hallucinate, and I think they're getting better and better and better. But if you're responsible for production line, at any cost, you do not want that production line to be impacted by a decision that's outside of your control. So I think that statistic probably will change over time when we become more trusting and more sure of the outputs of models and AI. So I just wanted to talk you through a little bit of how I suppose we think about adopting these new technologies. So we've had a platform for many years, which we use for essentially helping our customers reduce their energy consumption. And essentially, it's an analytics platform that if you consider it, that we take data from lots of different places. So it's mainly IoT, sensor data, meter data, etc. And it comes from industrial and commercial sites. We also take data from Flexible Gen. We also have other places that we take data from. We also get contextual data, so things like weather information, grid information, etc. And that's all loaded into the platform as well. And the platform does many things. So it can do predictive analytics, it can do enterprise kind of KPI engine, there's kind of ML and AI driven functionality in terms of watchers and alerting and stuff like that. However, one of the things that we found in terms of our customers is that they were becoming more challenged in finding really skilled resources. And for making best use out of insights that are given to you in terms of your operation, sometimes you would need an expert to actually interpret what the platform was telling you. So, and it could be telling you that in a graph or something like that. But also figure out, well, what do I need to do now? So that's great that you've told me that essentially I can see, an inefficiency in this particular boiler, but what does that mean and what do I do now? So we started thinking about this in terms of looking at, I suppose, our SME experts that we have in the business are all engineers, and they could be a boiler expert, they could be a fridge expert, they could be a compressed air expert, and they would look at these dashboards and they would know exactly what needs to be done. But the customer didn't necessarily have those resources on hand to actually help them. So what we decided to do was to actually create what we call our knowledge database. So it's got all that engineering expertise knowledge that people have built up in their heads over years and years and years. And we distilled it down into a knowledge base. And actually, in actual fact, we have multiple knowledge bases. So we have ones for different types of equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So just for simplicity's sake, it's represented here as one knowledge base. But that's including, it distills knowledge from people's brains, as in through surveys, through questionnaires, through all of this that we work through with our engineers, but also from, say, example white papers that we've generated over the many, many years that we're in business, etc. So we distill that down into a knowledge base of expert knowledge. Then we have our platform, which is existing, and we have that all the data analytics in there. And then essentially, what AI and these large language models are good at is language, okay, interpretation of language. So essentially, we created features within the platform to allow our customers to ask questions of the system. As an example, you could ask it something like, what is my most energy efficient site? And if it gives you back an answer, you say why. And then it'll reason, it'll look at the data, it'll look at the expert knowledge base, and it'll actually reason to kind of say, okay, well, this site is more efficient because it looks as if the compressor sequencing is really optimal, as opposed to these other three sites where the compressor sequencing isn't optimal. And therefore, here's an opportunity for you to actually make change and make an improvement in terms of the sequencing of your compressors. So all of that is now within the platform. And that really does lean on, in terms of the language piece, the interpretation of language on those foundational models. And from our perspective, we don't really mind which foundational model it is. We'll always keep an eye on what's the best one at the right time and what they're especially good at. So some models are better at kind of coding or mathematical interpretation or calculations, and then other models are better at reasoning, etc. So, and I would advise anybody who's starting on their journey to have an orchestration layer within their platform so they can essentially change models depending on what the question that's asked. So that kind of gives you an understanding of how systems can leverage these new technologies in order to solve problems that different companies may have in the business. And then when we think about these models and the speed at which they're coming out, so even for somebody like me who's glued to this, to be honest, because it's a huge area of interest as well as my job, but it is incredible how fast the models are evolving. And if you look at this date here is 2023, and this was the ranking. So when I say ranking, again, all the models are tested against certain capabilities and they're ranked. So Google came out on top, OpenAI was next, Meta, Anthropic, etc. That was 2023. This is the ranking in 2020 in February 25. So you see OpenAI, ChatGPT was ranked highest, Anthropic, etc., etc., etc. And then they're in on the 6th of May, it's a different story again. But the interesting thing about here is we saw the introduction of a model called DeepSeek. So this was developed by a Chinese company, and essentially DeepSeek was the first open source model. So and also XAI, which is Elon Musk's AI company, they brought out Grok 3. The interesting thing about the two of these, now Grok 3 isn't an open source model, it's a commercial model. But the interesting thing about these two is that it took them so much less time to develop models that essentially could compete with some of the models that have been around and companies that have been around a lot longer than they have. So essentially, it took them way less money and compute power to create them, and essentially way less time. So again, a lot of these companies are starting to use the code generation capabilities to now create the technologies. So it's increasing exponentially because you don't have as much reliance on humans in terms of creating them. And then I just took this yesterday as a snapshot to see if it had changed essentially since February, and it has slightly. So again, these models, this is a very micro view of it. So different versions have pros and cons. So some might be faster, some might be less expensive, but may not be as strong in terms of efficacy. So you have to kind of know which model you want to use for what, but it is a completely evolving landscape, and every single week, I would say there's new advancements. So I think the big things people are waiting for at the moment is their OpenAI are releasing their version 5, which is supposed to be their first AGI model, which is, I suppose, artificial general intelligence. So anyway, we'll be waiting with bated breath on that. In terms to bring it back to context in terms of what we do, and I suppose a lot of attendees here on the call will be in this similar place in terms of thinking about energy transition. So what are the big things that AI can give us in terms of energy transition? And essentially, it really is around that optimization and efficiency, and it's around that AI-driven analytics. So to analyze your data at such a mass scale that it can give you insights that you wouldn't have been previously able to glean. Predictive maintenance is a good one as well in terms of ML is really good at predicting failures based on past histories. So that definitely will reduce downtime and maintenance costs for companies. Um, I think I mentioned already the enhanced decision making. So again, it's just the vast amount of data that these systems can um, deal with is beyond any human element. And then decarbonization at scale. So it really does support the large scale emissions reduction and energy transition strategies that companies have. So sometimes it's nearly easier to come up with a strategy than it is to the actual execution of it. And I think that these technologies will be the key to unlocking that for companies. So just to sum up, really, I would say that AI is not a one size fits all. So you've seen the difference of all those different models, and some are good for certain things, and there's lots of differences in terms of cost and speed and capability, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not a one size fits all. It depends what you want to do. I would say also that automation does not equal autonomy. So what I mean by that is when you set something up and you automate it using AI, there should be proper guardrails. There should be proper, security oversight, compliance oversight, etc. So you can't, and you can't just set it up and leave it. So that is kind of going to be a constant thing, I think, in companies from now on. There is large amounts of data required, and we know from our own experience that sometimes this is a little bit limited, and sometimes it needs work in terms of the categorization and classification and data cleansing. But essentially, that's kind of ground zero. That's where you have to start, and it will hugely help you as you move forward. And then obviously, it's not magic. Okay, so it's been around a long time. There's been so many evolutions of what we call AI, or AI, that word is thrown around so much. But in terms of, whether it be machine learning all the way up as far as AI, I think that essentially the time is now. It's been around a long time. It's evolving rapidly, but I think the benefits for companies are enormous. So I'm just going to hand you over to, excuse me, to Keith now, who's going to give you a little bit of insight into the practical examples of how we are leveraging this in terms of what we do.
Great, thank you very much, Barbara. I'm just sharing my screen now. I'm hoping everybody can see my desktop. Can you see that, Barbara? Just check in there. I'll make sure it's in slideshow mode.
I can, yeah. I can see your
Fantastic.
calendar and everything as well. So maybe just share the app as opposed to the screen.
Okay, just let me stop that. So here, and I'll make sure, bear with me here for a second. So let's try that again. Now, can you see it?
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. You just
Perfect.
click screen share or share there. You're good.
Perfect. Okay. So just to kick off, thanks very much again for your time. And it's a pleasure to talk to everybody and give you a good overview of where we are, the journey that we've been on, our vision for the future of AI and our product, and just a little bit more sort of information on that journey and the steps we had to take as an organization as we move to embrace this very exciting and fast moving development in tech. Okay, so the question, of course, is why did we as a business incorporate AI features into our product? So what we'd say to anybody who's in our shoes is, well, you have to have real pain points that you're trying to address when you're incorporating any technology into your product. So you add AI to address a pain point and not just for the sake of it because it's a shiny new object. And the main pain points that we wanted to address in terms of rolling out AI within the Cool Planet OS product is reducing friction in decision making. So making the process of reaching a conclusion and making a decision faster, executing projects faster. So as we say here, a goal without a plan is just a wish. So coming up with a plan and formulating a plan to address a particular course of action and acting on it. AI is very well suited to that. And then, as Barbara said in her discussion, bridging that knowledge gap, as we all know, there's pinch points in terms of certain skills and experience that are available in organizations. And People cycle out of businesses for a variety of different reasons, and equipment might be old and particularly scarce, and the resources are scarce to support them. And AI can obviously support that. So what I'll do is I'll show you 3 examples of how we've addressed those pain points in the coming slides one by one. So this is a short video. I had to slow it down. Actually, the actual interface is a little bit faster. So it's taken from within the platform itself. And the first pain point I'm going to illustrate for you here is reducing the friction in decision making. So I'll just articulate what's going on here. So this is a cool Planet OS platform. You're looking at a chart on a dashboard in the platform. And each line in that chart represents a compressor and a refrigeration system. So as you can imagine, crunching through and understanding the data and what's happening can take a little bit of time. So clicking on that little AI button allows the user to have a conversation with the chart in natural language and in any language, actually, any spoken language. So what I'm saying here is, what can you tell me about what's happening in the chart? And what's happening here, the AI is actually analyzing the data underneath the chart, and it's looking for issues, be it discrepancies or issues for particular attention. So you can see the slow typing here going on. So what I'm doing is I'm putting in what compressor is most efficient. So rather than taking the information out, putting it into an Excel sheet, running it through a pivot table and trying to understand what's going on, the system is analyzing that and clearly telling me that compressor 4 is the most efficient one here. And I can have a series of follow-on questions here with the UI very efficiently and easily here. So you're just talking, no more exporting data out, no more analyzing the data in pivot tables or reports. Just have a conversation with the data to understand what's going on. Pain point 2 then is executing projects faster. So as I said, understanding an insight and reaching a conclusion on it is one thing, but then putting that into an action and putting an action plan in place to address it is a different thing here. So similarly to analyzing the data, which I showed you in the previous video, what we do here is that there's actually a workflow baked into the tool. So what's happening is that course of action, we have a feature in the product called the opportunity register. And that's a register of opportunities for you to decarbonize or save energy. So it's a project management tool, if you like. So what's happening here is the AI understands the context of what's going on. So you see this little Ask AI button here. So again, similar to the previous one, I click on that button and say, essentially ask the system a question. So we have a number of suggested questions here populated relative to the context of the chart. So in this particular case, is there any unusual pressure drops in the system? The AI is thinking, so it's having a good consideration there, considerate thought. And you can see there's a little button here, create opportunity, that'll pop up again. Essentially what it's done is it said, I think that there's something that really needs your consideration and investigation here. Why don't you create an opportunity in the opportunity register to come back and have a look at it? And it can be assigned to a particular user with all of that context that the AI has detected within the visualization or widget on the dashboard itself. So I pick the site that it's to go to, create an opportunity, and it dynamically goes into the opportunity register, already done. You can see there's a little blue link there that I can click in and go back into it. So it allows you to be super effective. You don't need to context switch, jump out of one feature into another one. It can all be done sort of straight away in the platform. Onto the third pain point, and that's bridging the knowledge gap. So we've talked about that a little bit, where it can be difficult to get specialist engineering or expertise or knowledge. And what we've done, as Barbara mentioned in her talk, is we've distilled a lot of our specialized expertise into a digital form, and layered an AI on top of it, and allows the user to have a discussion and understand without being an expert themselves. So what you have here is a little button on the top right. If I want some further information on what's going on, the AI will allow you to dig in and understand. So what this is I'm interested in building a dashboard or a watcher, or a watcher as an alerting system within the platform. And in this particular case, I'd like to add a widget to a dashboard to help me look and spot an issue down the road. And this is a completely automated natural language interaction with the platform. And again, as I said, it can be in any sort of written or spoken language. And you just follow the instructions through. It doesn't sleep, so it's available day or night in any language. And then you can kind of dig in and benefit from both the engineering knowledge and the product knowledge as well to help you do your job really. So they're just three of the features that are live in the platform as we speak. And some of our customers are actually using them. And if you'd like to find out about how you can get your hands on them, we'll be sharing the recording of the webinar after the call. So there'll be some details in there around getting in touch with your account manager to find out. But before we do that, I'd like to give you a sense of our vision for where we see AI going beyond just that conversational interface within the platform. So this is an image that we use quite a bit to articulate our thinking in the business, and this is by the human, with the human, and for the human. So right now we're somewhere in the by the human and with the human sort of journey, but ultimately we think a lot of the features that we plan to implement will actually be done in an automated way, and we can give you some sort of more information about our thinking on that in the following slides. So what will come after today's AI? So our belief is that the next frontier in AI is the agent, the autonomous decision-making agent. So again, with a lot of our knowledge and expertise distilled into it. So our vision is you would have these virtual subject matter experts, or SMEs, who might have specialist knowledge in those sort of rare to find and difficult to secure areas of knowledge, be it compressed air systems or boiler systems or refrigeration systems. What we believe is ultimately a lot of those skills and experience will be digitized, and not only in terms of you having a conversation and the system reacting to it, but the concept of an agent is it'll actually be a proactive agent that will collaborate and automatically do things for you. So it'll interpret those vast streams of data, it'll continuously learn, and it'll be capable of complex reasoning and planning and execution, joining calls, collaborating with other agents and humans in a seamless and automated way. So what we did here is we had a little bit of fun with this. This is unsurprisingly an AI generated video here by OpenAI Sora. So what we really tried to do was stretch the imagination of what could be automated. And unfortunately, what a lot of people came through with was it would be fantastic if a report was automated. But we think we can do a little bit better than that in terms of what could be automated and what future pain points could be resolved due to AI. And we'll touch on those in a minute or two. But just if you imagine a little bit more ambitious than just having a report developed for you, if you can imagine a system is understanding and optimizing the performance across all of your sites. If you're at an enterprise level, it could evaluate project performance based on live data. It could autonomously adjust even energy intensive processes in the plant in real time. So just imagine this is another sort of bit of kind of, I wouldn't say theater, but a bit of a thought exercise that we did within the business. Just imagine the big picture. What could the day in the life of a site manager look like? So you can imagine yourself as a busy site manager. Something is running when you're asleep. So the AI detects an efficiency drop in a key compressor, something that perhaps a human mightn't have noticed or may have to go and look for and pull a report out, and back to those dreaded pivot tables I mentioned a few minutes ago. So when you come in or don't come in, maybe it's on your mobile device, instead of digging through logs, the AI has pinpointed the cause of the issue, tells you it's a suboptimal pressure setting, and suggests a corrective course of action. And then back to that sort of important learning that Barbara mentioned around the human in the loop and human approval. We also believe that that's the case. So you as a site manager can go in, look at the suggested remedial courses of attention, and then with one click you implement the fix, and the AI adjusts your pressure setting and generates a report. So what is the outcome of that sort of dream state? So no downtime, no wasted energy, and it keeps your plant running at peak performance, again, even when you sleep. So what could that look like for an enterprise user? So when you're asleep, the AI monitors operation across all sites in all time zones, in all languages, and detects inefficiencies, tracking underperforming significant energy users, and has identified 8 projects across 12 sites that are in risk of overrunning their cost targets. So when you log in, again, the AI presents a list and it does predictive simulations to show what interventions might be particularly effective in addressing them. And then again, that click to approve part, we think that'll be vital. So the AI generates a recommended priority action plan, and with one approval, those are assigned to the appropriate site teams. And all of your execution is tracked accordingly. And again, you only act on the highest outcome and most efficient opportunities that are presented to you without any of that manual reporting or phone calls or guesswork involved. So just to talk a little bit about the journey and some of the learnings that we can share that we went on as we went from kind of reluctantly or skeptically looking at AI and being concerned about it to wholeheartedly embracing it and making it a centerpiece of our product. And hopefully some of these learnings will be helpful to you. So I guess you have to really understand why the skepticism happens within your organization. So people are concerned about jobs displacement, that the AI will replace them essentially. And then there's a lack of understanding perhaps about how AI does what it does, and that can slow its adoption. So how did we address those myths? So we really emphasize that we don't see AI replacing the jobs. We really see it as a potential superpower to augment the people in our business. There's a myth as well that AI is a bit of a black box, but if you use any of those reasoning models, and most of those foundational models have reasoning, you can see the thought process that's going in. DeepSeek's a great example of seeing the thoughts and what's being considered as it progresses from your question to developing an answer for you. And then that idea of AI being too complex and hard to address. Well, again, voice interfaces and the use of cameras really means that AI is accessible to a lot of different people for a lot of different skill sets and levels of expertise across an organization. It's not just limited to, particularly technical people as such. For us then, of course, having that executive sponsorship at a senior level was very important. And very much, again, as I said, we positioned AI as an assistant and not a replacement for staff. And then what we did was we started with identifying really quick wins, and we circulated those as broadly as we could. So we'd share the knowledge across the organization, across a number of different channels, just to show the potential benefits of it, and also for a bit of fun, some of those hallucinations that Barbara mentioned as well. But it's really about showing that AI has a tremendous amount of potential, and to show people across the organization are experimenting with it. And then understand the limits, I guess. It's not a one size fits all, and it's surprisingly human. It makes mistakes and hallucinates, and this is part of the process. And that sort of reinforces that belief of ours that there needs to be a human in the loop in those critical business decisions. So how do we believe you can leverage the power of AI in your organization? So find that sponsor, find somebody senior in the business that is interested in experimenting with it. Sort out the data is hugely important. Barbara mentioned that as well. I mean, bad data in is bad data out. So identify your key data sources, maybe your large or significant energy users, and maybe start with those, and ensure your data is collected in real time and centralized. Start with a small, real use case. So once your data is ready, and again, that's fundamental, start with maybe a single piece of equipment in your plant, like one boiler or your compressed air system. Really dig in and see what the AI can do for you, and share those experiences, good and bad. So update your leadership, but the rest of your organization as well, so they can understand the learnings and share the learnings, and then plan for the next step. So if those small experiments work, and hopefully they do, scale it up to multiple systems, so multiple boilers across multiple sites potentially, and go from there. So in summary, key takeaways: As Barbara said, the pace of development of AI is accelerating very rapidly and exponentially, and competition is growing. The open source community is leaning in. Pricing is coming down, and new features are launching almost daily. It can be a bit exhaustive to keep pace with that rapid pace of change. And then those improvements in interfaces that I mentioned, so the voice and video changes will make it easier for more people in your organization to access and use those AI features. AI is already delivering. So again, some of those use cases that Barbara mentioned. So find your own use case and experiment with it. And that's everything from predictive maintenance potentially to optimizations, and maybe see what precedents exist. They exist everywhere. And now is the time to act. So the companies that embrace AI today will lead in efficiency, sustainability, and competitive advantage. So just to end in a quote, similar to how we began with a quote, and this goes back, it's something to bear in mind at that's a similar sort of analogous period when robotics were first moving into industry and people were likewise scared and threatened by them. This quote's from the former CEO of ABB, where they say the countries with the highest robot density have among the lowest unemployment rates. So technology and humans combined in the right way will really drive prosperity. So that's it on the product side for me. Yeah, as I
Great.
said, yeah, the video will be circulated after the masterclass, and contact details and information will be available in there to allow you to connect with the right account management or sales staff to get you guys using the platform and the features. And we'd love to get some feedback as soon as you start doing so.
I'm just going to keep, before we wrap up, there's a few questions
Sure,
in here. So we probably won't get to all of them, unfortunately, but we can
sure.
cover off
I'll stop sharing.
after the event. So the first one is, I think we've answered this one actually. So how do I go about linking our energy management system? So it's Clarity to AI systems, e.g. Microsoft Copilot. So essentially you don't have to. So
Yeah.
if you're using our platform already, and again, I see another question down farther. It says they can't see the AI function in their version. They won't unless they have made contact with us, with
Yeah.
your account manager. And essentially we can get that switched on for you. So that's essentially all you need to do there. And another question here is, how do we begin integrating AI into a site that doesn't currently have centralized energy data?
Mm.
So that's a good one. And I think that we see that sometimes, well, with a good few customers, in terms of when we're not just a software company. So when we liaise with a customer, a potential customer, first off, we usually start off, if it's a case that it isn't really mechanized in a way, as in we don't have data flowing through, we don't have historians, we don't have anything like that, we do a full audit. So essentially we help the customer figure out what they need to do in order to actually embrace, I suppose, technology from a data insights perspective, and then all the way as far as using AI. So in that scenario, I would guess if you have no centralized energy data, I think you'd either end up needing to install some sort of sensors or
Mm,
meters so that we could gather data, or like there's no other way around it, I suppose. If you don't have data, you have to start somewhere.
true, true.
Um, Another question. I might let you answer this one, Keith, just to share it around. So, can the AI handle unique or highly customized equipment setup in any facility?
Um, well, I guess the beauty of the fact that we've been in business for, 15 years, we have that very rich theme of kind of engineering knowledge. So although maybe one piece of equipment might be unique across that particular client, it's probably unlikely across our broad base of engineering kind of knowledge that we haven't encountered it somewhere. Now, the AI mightn't have, but I guess that coming together of that human and the AI might be kind of an opportunity for us to be able to support that a little bit better. It's hard to be specific without kind of understanding what the situation or the use case is. But you can imagine, if there's a particular type of equipment that maybe one of our engineers or one of your engineers understands, we can combine that sort of our proprietary knowledge with some of that foundational knowledge from a model and see if we can support it. But we found some kind of very interesting use cases where our engineers by their very nature like to kind of argue and prove things wrong. So we've had some great success where um, uh, the AI has stood up very well to significant scrutiny from very skilled and experienced engineers in the business. So they're always up for a challenge as well. So I think it'd be
Always.
interesting to maybe unpick that if we could find out a little bit more about the specific use case and see
Yeah.
if it'd be a great test as well for the platform.
I think also worst case that if it was really, really something we'd never seen before, you might end up augmenting some of our knowledge base information
Exactly.
to support
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
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 Okay, I think we're right up on time. So just to say thank you so much to everybody and for attending, and I hope you got some benefit out of it, and hopefully you walked away with some learning that you didn't know before. So a huge thanks to Sanj, who's also on the call, who organized today, and thanks to Keith as well for presenting. And again, Keith has mentioned this, but there will be a link, that survey link, straight after this session, and you can get in touch with your account manager or with Cool Planet in general. If you have any other questions, we'd be happy to answer to the best of our knowledge. Okay, thank you. Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye bye.